Everybody want to be successful until it's time to be clear. You want to live your dream, but you don't even know what it is. You say you want it bad, but do you even know what it is? You can't chase what you can't define. You can't win a race if you don't know where the finish line is. Most people aren't failing because they're lazy. They're failing because they're confused. They're moving, but they have no map. They're putting in the hours, the energy, the hustle, but they're working in circles. That's the dangerous part. When effort and intention don't align. You can't hit a target you can't see. That's why clarity isn't optional. It's the difference between progress and motion. The difference between existing and truly living. Imagine trying to drive across the country with no GPS, no map, and no destination. You got gas, your car works fine, but where are you going? You can't just say, I want to go somewhere nice. That's not enough, because somewhere nice can land you anywhere. You can end up in the desert when your soul really needed the ocean. That's how most people live their lives. They say they want success or freedom or happiness, but they've never defined what that means to them. And if you can't define it, how can you pursue it? How can you hit a target that doesn't exist? We've been trained to believe movement equals success. We fill our calendars, stay busy, and convince ourselves that if we're tired at the end of the day, we must be doing something right. But being tired isn't the goal. Being effective is. You're waking up early, going to sleep late, putting in the work. But if you don't know what you're aiming for, all you're doing is wasting energy. You're running in a fog. And let me tell you, there's nothing more frustrating than working hard and still feeling stuck. Clarity changes everything. The moment you define what you truly want, your energy starts to align. Your decisions get sharper. You stop saying yes to things that don't fit your vision. You stop comparing your life to other people because now you know what lane you're in. And once you got a lane, you can speed up with purpose. Every move becomes intentional. Every action takes you closer to something real. When I say clarity, I don't mean surface level goals. I don't mean writing down make six figures or own a business. I mean asking yourself the deep, uncomfortable questions. What makes you come alive? What breaks your heart? What would you still do if nobody paid you for it? What do you want your life to feel like, not just look like? These are the questions that lead to real clarity, not based on status, not based on pressure, but based on truth. The reason most people avoid clarity is because clarity forces decisions. Once you know what you want, now you're responsible for it. You can't hide behind excuses anymore. You can't blame your parents, your past, your environment. When you're clear, you're accountable. That's scary, but it's also freeing. Because when you finally see your target, when it's crystal clear in your mind, you wake up with fire. You don't need to be pushed. You're pulled. Pulled by purpose. Pulled by vision. Pulled by destiny. And let me tell you, when you got that kind of clarity, obstacles look smaller. You don't fold when life gets hard because you know why you're doing it. You stop quitting things that matter and start quitting things that don't. You say no to distractions without guilt. You stay focused, disciplined, locked in. That's what clarity gives you. It simplifies your life so you can amplify your results. You don't have to be the smartest. You don't have to be the most talented. But if you can get clear on what you want, so clear you can taste it, feel it, see it, you'll beat people who are smarter than you every single time. Because while they're thinking, you're moving. While they distracted, you're locked in. While they busy being busy, you're hitting the bullseye every day. So if you want to win, don't just grind harder. Get clearer. Get honest. Get still long enough to listen to your own voice, not society's, not your parents, not your friends, not your friends, your voice. Ask yourself, what's my target? What does success really look like for me? Until you answer that, you're just firing arrows into the dark. You don't need a new opportunity. You need a new level of clarity. Once you get that, the rest will follow. The action, the progress, the breakthrough. Because now you're not just moving, you're moving with aim. And when you aim right, you hit right. Every time. You've been chasing goals that were never yours, working day and night, grinding every hour only to realize you're exhausted, burned out, and still feel empty. Why? Because you're chasing what looks good, not what feels right. You're chasing what they told you you should want. A fancy job, a six-figure income, a relationship that looks good in photos. But deep down, it doesn't light you up. It doesn't fulfill you. It doesn't speak to your spirit. And if we being real, it's not even your dream. You have to understand something fundamental. Just because the world praises it doesn't mean it's for you. Just because it works for them doesn't mean it's aligned with your purpose. The scariest thing you can do is become successful at something that doesn't fulfill you. To climb a ladder only to realize it was leaning against the wrong wall. That's the trap. That's what happens when you chase someone else's dream. You scrolled on social media, saw someone in Bali working remotely, and now you think you want that life. You saw someone buy a luxury car, and now you're working overtime for something that won't even make you feel whole. But you didn't ask yourself the hard question. Does this really align with who I am and what I'm about? Does it speak to my soul, or is it just noise? That's why people are miserable in jobs they chose themselves. That's why people go to college for degrees they never use. That's why people marry the image, not the person, and end up in relationships where their dreams die quietly every day. Because they never stop to ask, is this really me? Or am I just performing for approval? You can't fake alignment. You can't fake passion. You can't wake up every morning with drive if you're chasing a dream you borrowed. You might fool the world, but you can't fool yourself. And you definitely can't fool your purpose. Your purpose knows when you've abandoned it. It knows when you traded authenticity for applause. The world doesn't need another copy. It needs you. Fully, truly, unapologetically. And that only happens when you stop chasing what's not yours and start reconnecting with what is. You weren't born to follow someone else's path. You were born to create your own. You were born with a unique calling, a specific gift, a one-of-a-kind fire that no one else can replicate. But to access that, you have to stop chasing distractions disguised as dreams. Let me be real with you. This shift isn't easy. Because when you stop chasing what's not yours, you're going to feel alone at first. People won't understand. They'll say you're crazy for walking away from the good job. They'll question why you're changing direction when things look fine on the outside. But don't confuse comfort with calling. Just because it's stable doesn't mean it's right. Just because it's accepted doesn't mean it's yours. And let me say this, if you've already gone down the wrong road, it's not too late to turn around. Just because you've invested years into something doesn't mean you're obligated to stay there. That's not loyalty. That's fear. Don't let time spent be the reason you keep sacrificing who you are. Clarity is about alignment, not appearance. It's about what fits your heart, not what fits the mold. Here's the truth. When you stop chasing what's not yours, something amazing happens. You make space for what's not yours. You create room for the ideas, people, and paths that are truly meant for you. Your energy gets lighter. Your focus gets sharper. Your grind becomes purposeful. You're not just moving anymore, you're being moved, pulled by something deeper. That's what happens when you walk in alignment with your truth. So ask yourself today, what have I been chasing that doesn't belong to me? What dream am I holding on to because it's popular, not because it's personal? What would I choose if I weren't afraid to disappoint others? That's where your real life begins. That's where clarity starts. And when you find that path, your path, there's no need to fake motivation. The fire is real. The passion is real. And the life you're building is finally fits who you really are. Stop running someone else's race. Stop chasing someone else's victory. Get honest, get aligned, and go all in on what's yours. That's when the grind becomes joy. That's when the struggle feels worth it. Because finally, you're not just chasing success, you're living your truth. We live in a world that glorifies hustle, work harder, move faster, do more, be everywhere at once, and don't stop until you make it. That's the message we get over and over again. But here's the truth no one wants to talk about. Speed without direction is useless. All gas and no GPS doesn't get you where you want to go. It just burns you out. That's why clarity doesn't come from moving faster. It comes from slowing down, from stillness, from silence. Some of the most important breakthroughs in life don't happen when you're sprinting. They happen when you stop, when you disconnect, when you pause long enough to hear your own thoughts without the noise of the world drowning them out. But that's the problem. We've become addicted to movement. We don't know how to sit still. We don't know how to rest. We fear silence. We're afraid that if we stop, we'll fall behind. But in reality, if you never stop, you'll never truly see where you're supposed to go. Think about it. When you're driving through a storm, what's the smart move? Do you speed up? No, you slow down. You focus. You tune in. You become more aware. Because speed in a storm is dangerous. The same is true in life. If your mind is cluttered, your heart is heavy, and your direction is unclear, speeding up is the worst thing you can do. You're not being productive, you're just being frantic. You're not being focused, you're just being reactive. People think clarity is about doing more, reading more books, going to more seminars, talking to more people, consuming more content. But what if the answer isn't more? What if the answer is less? Less noise, less scrolling, less outside opinions. What if the real clarity comes when you get quiet enough to hear the voice within you, the one that's been whispering the truth the whole time? Some of the most powerful people in the world have regular moments of stillness. Athletes, entrepreneurs, creatives, they take time to sit with themselves, to check in, to reflect, because they understand that you can't pour from an empty cup. You can't run forever on fumes. If you want clarity, you need space. You need silence. You need to disconnect from the world so you can reconnect with yourself. It's in the stillness that your mind begins to clear. It's in the stillness that your heart starts to speak. And what it tells you might surprise you. You might realize you've been climbing the wrong mountain. You might realize you've been chasing goals that don't align with your value. You might finally see that the thing you thought you wanted was just a mask for what you really need. Peace, purpose, connection. But most people avoid stillness because it's uncomfortable. When you slow down, all the things you've been ignoring start to show up. The fear, the doubt, the insecurity. That's why people stay busy, because being busy is a distraction. It keeps you from facing what's really going on. But if you want clarity, you have to go through that discomfort. You have to be willing to sit in the silence long enough to hear the truth, even when it's hard. Stillness isn't laziness. Stillness isn't weakness. Stillness is strength. It takes courage to stop. It takes discipline to unplug. It takes maturity to realize that clarity is not something you chase. It's something you create through intention, through space, through silence, through reflection. Start with 10 minutes. 10 minutes with no phone, no music, no noise, just you and your thoughts. Ask yourself, what do I really want right now? What's working? What's not? Am I on the path that feels right for me? Or am I just moving because I'm afraid to stop? You'll be surprised how much wisdom is already inside you. You just haven't been quiet enough to hear it. So stop believing the lie that fast is better. Stop thinking that if you're not constantly in motion, you're falling behind. You're not. Sometimes the most powerful move you can make is to pause, to breathe, to listen. Because when the noise fades and the dust settles, that's when the truth shows up. And that truth, that quiet, honest truth, is the beginning of real clarity. Not the kind that comes from books or podcasts, the kind that comes from you, from within, from stillness. And once you've got that clarity, no storm can shake you, no distraction can derail you. Because now you're not just moving, you're moving on purpose, with direction, with peace. And that changes everything. When you get clear on what you want, everything in your life begins to shift. Your focus sharpens. Your energy becomes more intentional. But the biggest transformation, your ability to say no gets stronger. Clarity gives you power, not just to pursue your goals, but to protect them, to guard your time, your energy, your vision. Because once you know where you're going, you stop entertaining distractions that don't align with the destination. A lot of people feel stuck, not because they lack talent or effort, but because they say yes to too many things. They're pulled in 100 directions. Every opportunity looks good. Every request feels important. But good doesn't mean right. Clarity helps you separate what's urgent from what's essential. It helps you say, this might be a good opportunity, but it's not my opportunity. The truth is, without clarity, you'll try to do everything and end up doing nothing well. You'll try to please everyone and end up losing yourself. You'll wake up tired, go to sleep anxious, and wonder why nothing feels fulfilling. It's because you're operating without boundaries. You're giving your energy to people, projects, and paths that don't feed your purpose. But when you're clear on what matters most, you stop wasting time on what doesn't. Clarity gives you the power to filter. Every decision, every invite, every task gets run through one question. Does this move me closer to my purpose or further away? If the answer is no, then it's a no. It doesn't matter if it's popular. It doesn't matter if it pays well. If it doesn't align, you let it go. That kind of discipline doesn't come from willpower. It comes from clarity. When you know what you want, it's easier to recognize what you don't. That's why people who are clear on their goals often seem fearless. It's not that they don't get tempted or distracted. It's that they've already decided what's non-negotiable. They're not available for drama. They're not available for meaningless work. They're not available for relationships that drain them. They've drawn the line, and everything on the other side of that line is a threat to their vision. But let's be real. Getting to that place takes honesty. You have to admit to yourself what you really want. Not what sounds good, not what other people expect, but your truth. That's the foundation. When you know who you are and where you're going, you stop living reactive. You start living strategic. You stop chasing attention and start chasing alignment. It's a shift in mindset. You no longer base your worth on being busy. You base it on being effective. You no longer measure success by how many people approve. You measure it by how aligned you feel with your mission. That's what clarity does. It anchors you. It gives you a sense of direction that no storm can shake. It doesn't mean life gets easier. It means you get stronger. You get more focused. You waste less time. You tolerate less nonsense. People will notice the difference. They might even get uncomfortable because when you get clear, you start moving differently. You stop over-explaining yourself. You stop saying maybe when you really mean no. You protect your peace like it's your job because it is. And the more you protect it, the more momentum you build because now your energy is concentrated. It's not scattered. It's not diluted. It's powerful. That's the power of clarity. It simplifies your life. It doesn't add more. It subtracts the unnecessary. And in a world that's constantly telling you to do more, be more, and chase more, that kind of simplicity is radical. It's revolutionary. It's rare, but it's also available to anyone who's willing to slow down, get honest, and do the work of defining what truly matters. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, unfocused, distracted, don't start with your to-do list. Start with your vision. Get clear. Ask yourself what actually deserves your energy, what actually feeds your growth, what actually makes you feel alive. Then start cutting ruthlessly, because every yes to something meaningless is a no to something that could change your life. Clarity gives you freedom, not to do more, but to do less of what doesn't matter and more of what does. And when you live from that place, every decision becomes simpler. Every move becomes intentional. You don't just move fast, you move right. And that's how you win. Not by being everywhere, but by being exactly where you're meant to be. Most people think discipline is about forcing yourself to work hard every day, no matter how you feel. And yes, discipline is about consistency. But when you truly get clear on what you want, discipline becomes something different. It becomes natural. It becomes aligned. It doesn't feel like punishment. It feels like commitment. When the vision is clear, the effort doesn't feel like sacrifice. It feels like investment. When you know what you want and you know why you want it, something changes inside of you. You stop needing external motivation. You stop waiting on a podcast, a YouTube video, or someone else's approval to get started. You don't need inspiration to take action. You're already locked in. Why? Because the picture in your head is so clear, so real, that it pulls you forward. You're not chasing success. You're being drawn by a vision that speaks to your soul. That's what real clarity does. It doesn't just help you make a plan. It helps you commit to that plan when it gets hard. Because it will get hard. There will be days you feel tired, days you feel discouraged, days you question everything. But if you're clear, if your vision is rooted in something deep, you keep showing up. You keep building. You keep growing. Not because you have to, but because you want to. Because you believe in what you're building. Discipline without clarity leads to burnout. You can force yourself to wake up at 5 a.m., hit the gym, or work late into the night, but if you don't know what you're working toward, it won't last. You'll crash. You'll lose motivation. You'll start resenting the very routines that were supposed to help you grow. That's what happens when you're disciplined without direction. You become a machine, busy, but disconnected. But when clarity drives your discipline, everything shifts. You start managing your time differently. You stop wasting hours on things that don't move the needle. You say no to things that used to distract you because they no longer compete with your vision. You stop needing permission to pursue what matters to you. That's the kind of discipline that leads to transformation. Not just behavior change, but identity change. You don't just do the work. You become the kind of person who lives the work. The kind of person who doesn't need to convince themselves to be consistent, because consistency is part of who they are. That identity comes from clarity. When you can see the future you're building, you start becoming that person now. You start walking in alignment with your future self, making decisions today that your future self will thank you for. And that's the secret to real growth. You don't need to overhaul your entire life overnight. You need to get clear enough on your goal that you're willing to take one aligned step every day. Just one. One meal. One workout. One page. One sale. Over and over. That's what builds momentum. That's what builds confidence. Not perfection. Progress. And when that progress is tied to a clear vision, it becomes addictive. Not because it's easy, but because it matters. There's a certain kind of fire that only comes from purpose. You can't fake it. You can't force it. But once you've got it, once you're connected to the life you know you're supposed to build, it fuels everything. Your habits, your attitude, your decisions. That fire becomes your engine. It gets you up in the morning and keeps you grounded at night. That's discipline through clarity. So stop trying to be disciplined out of fear. Stop trying to will your way through life with no vision. That's why you're tired. That's why you keep starting and stopping. That's why you keep losing momentum. You don't need more pressure. You need more purpose. And purpose starts with clarity. What do you want? Why does it matter? Who do you need to become to get there? When you answer those questions honestly, discipline won't feel like a grind. It'll feel like alignment. You'll show up differently, think differently, move differently. Because now, you're not just hoping for success, you're living like it's already yours. Every choice, every action, every sacrifice, it all makes sense now because you see the finish line. And when you see it clearly enough, you'll do whatever it takes to cross it. That's not just discipline, that's devotion. And that's what turns potential into reality. When you finally get clarity on what you really want, there's one truth that hits harder than anything else. You can't do it alone. And not only that, you shouldn't try to. We live in a culture that idolizes self-made success, that praises the lone wolf, that says if you want it done right, do it yourself. But that mindset will keep you stuck because purpose is not a solo mission. Greatness doesn't grow in isolation. When the vision is clear, the next step is finding people who believe in that vision with you, who challenge you, who support you, who make you better. The people around you are either adding to your vision or subtracting from it. They're either helping you grow or keeping you stuck. And when you get clear on where you're going, you start noticing things. You notice how that one friend always doubts your ideas. You notice how the people you party with aren't the same people who show up when you need real support. You notice how some environments drain you while others push you to level up. That awareness is part of the clarity. Because clarity doesn't just show you the goal, it shows you what needs to change in order to get there. And sometimes the biggest thing that needs to change is your circle. If you're surrounded by people who aren't growing, who aren't dreaming, who aren't pursuing something bigger than themselves, then your clarity will constantly be at war with your environment. You'll feel like you're moving uphill with weights tied to your ankles. It's not just about motivation, it's about alignment. Are the people in your life aligned with the life you say you want? Or are they keeping you comfortable in a version of yourself you've already outgrown? This doesn't mean cutting everyone off or acting like you're better than anyone. It means being intentional. It means recognizing that energy is contagious. If you're serious about your goals, you can't afford to spend time around people who treat your vision like a joke. You need people who see your greatness, even when you're doubting yourself. You need people who will call you out, not just cheer you on, who will hold you to your standard, not let you slide back into your excuses. But don't just look for cheerleaders, look for challenges, look for mentors, look for teammates, people who've been where you want to go, people who stretch your perspective, people who bring skills you don't have. Because clarity doesn't just reveal what you're meant to do, it also shows you where you need help. And it takes strength to admit that, to say, I can't do this alone, and I don't have to. The strongest people aren't the ones who try to carry it all themselves. The strongest people are the ones who build the right team, who stay humble enough to learn, who know how to receive as well as give. That's what makes vision scalable. That's what makes dreams sustainable. Because no matter how motivated you are, there will be days when your energy dips, days when fear creeps in, days when you start questioning if the dream is even worth it. And on those days, it's the people around you that keep you going. So if you're serious about your future, take a hard look at your circle, not just who's fun to hang out with, but who feeds your purpose. Who reminds you of who you are when you forget? Who brings out the best in you? Because the clearer you get about what you want, the more you'll realize you need the right people beside you to build it. And here's the beautiful part. When you start moving with clarity, you start attracting those people. Purpose recognizes purpose. Energy recognizes energy. As you step into alignment with your goals, the right people start showing up. Not by accident, but because your clarity makes you magnetic. You become someone worth building with, worth believing in, worth walking beside. And suddenly your vision doesn't just belong to you, it becomes a movement, a mission, a shared fire. That's the power of clarity. It doesn't just transform your mindset, it transforms your community. It helps you build relationships rooted in purpose. And those relationships are what carry you through the tough seasons, through the setbacks, through the doubt. Because at the end of the day, your dream is bigger than you. And with the right people beside you, it becomes not just possible, but inevitable.